Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is Hannah Urbanek, and if you are one of those people who has just always felt like, I've got to live abroad, I've got to go try being in another culture, in another place for a long period of time, you just always knew you were going to do that, then you will have a lot in common with Hannah. She knew from a young age that she just had to go experience other cultures. She was growing up in Austria and is currently living in the UK. And so she just followed her dream to do this and walks us through how that transition came to be, the changes that she had to make, the sacrifices that she had to make. And I think most interestingly, what it's been like living in the UK pre and post Brexit, how coming from continental Europe and shifting to the United Kingdom and living in England has changed quite a bit, and some of the legalities around that. So we go into that and learn more about her life there and why she loves it, and just had a really great time getting to know Hannah a little bit better, and I think you will enjoy her story as well. She's a lot of fun to talk to. So please help me in welcoming Hannah to About Abroad. Hannah, we finally made this happen. Third time, fourth time's a charm, right?
Exactly. Yeah, who's counting? It's all good.
It's great to have you here and to see you again. I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit better and learn more about your story. I think you've got a interesting tale to tell and can be inspirational for some people and probably offer some good practical advice. So I think of a nice, easy way to get started here is just for those that are listening that don't know you already, just maybe give yourself a little background on who you are, where you are, what life is like today, and we'll get started from there.
Of course, yeah. So first off, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, really looking forward to this. And, likewise, I think we started talking years ago when I was working at my old company. So it's great to reconnect. So yeah, a little bit about me. So I'm originally from Austria. I grew up in Vienna, so it's legit. I know I have a British accent now, but
You have a legit British accent, yes.
yeah. I am an expat. So I went to university in Austria, but I went to an American university in Austria because why not? So my whole education, post school anyway, has been in English. And I went to London for like 6 months while I was at uni. Absolutely loved my time there. And always knew from when I started uni that eventually I was going to live abroad, work abroad, because that was the whole idea behind me studying at an American university, was this is going to open up some doors, right? So after uni, I secured a job in the UK. So I moved over to Manchester, so north of England originally, worked there. So I work in marketing. So I worked there for an agency. Then I moved to Brighton, so right to the south of England, lived there for a year. Then the bad B word, Brexit, happened. Moved back to Vienna for 6 months to kind of regroup and reevaluate what I'm doing. And then actually ended up back in Manchester for 2 years. And now I currently live in Bristol, so the southwest of the UK. And yeah, still work in marketing. So that hasn't changed. That is probably the only consistent thing in my life is the career. But yeah, so currently live in Bristol and absolutely love it. And for once in my life, have no plans of moving anywhere else at the moment. So that's good.
So you found a home in Bristol, at least, for now.
At least for now, yes. Yeah.
What do you love about Bristol? I know nothing about Bristol, to be honest, so I'm super curious.
Reasons to come visit, I hear. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's a great place. I think, it's just the kind of vibe and like the people are great. It has a very like artsy vibe to it. It's big on like independent shops and local communities, things like that, which is something that I'm all about. So yeah, and just it's very close to London, but far enough away so you can feel the difference. So it's if I want to go to London, I can be there in under 2 hours. But at the
Wow.
same time, soon as you're on the train leaving London, it gets quieter and quieter the closer you get to Bristol, which is great. But at the same time, it's really vibrant and lots to do. So yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
could go on and on. It's definitely put it on your list. It's a
yeah.
great place to visit. Yeah.
Is it sort of one of those like kind of second tier cities like if in Europe you've got Berlin and London and Madrid and Paris, but then there's like that second tier which is like like Munich or like I'm in
Yeah.
Valencia or something like that. It's one of those kind of second
Abs-
tiers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. I feel
Yeah.
like other regions in the UK might disagree with this, but yeah,
Yeah.
I would I would say so. Yeah.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah, I love finding these places because they're often like off the tourist track a bit. Like for instance, like I've been to
Absolutely.
London, I've gone to Bath, I've done Stonehenge. Like
Yeah.
you
Well,
you kind
Bath
of
isn't
go
too
and
far away. Yeah.
Bath is close. Okay,
Yeah. Yes. So
so
I actually currently, as we're recording this, I'm in Bath, because my office is based there, but
ah,
live in Bristol. So on the train, it's 15 minutes. So yeah.
cool. Okay, all right, good to know. Well, yeah, it's on the list. That's great. That's really good to know. I love discovering these places. Like that's the best is that second tier because there's still tons to do there. It's got its own unique identity. Like you
Yeah.
talked about the independent shops and there's vibrancy there, but it's not like metropolitan craziness either.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't coming back to your question, I really don't know what it was specifically, but those kind of places where you walk into a city and you go, this feels like me. This
Yeah.
this feels right. That's what I had in Bristol. Like the minute I arrived, I actually just came to visit for a weekend and I walked out of the train station, which is probably not the nicest part of town even, but I remember walking out and going, this oddly feels familiar and at home. And I get like I had that same feeling when I first went to London at the age of 13. So yeah, it does happen. It's weird, but it does happen. Yeah.
It's really fun when you find those places. I lived back in the US, the last place I lived before I moved back to Europe. I've skipped back and forth a lot, kind of like
Mhm.
you. It seems like back
Yeah.
so change places quite a bit. And but I lived in like a pretty small place, like about 100,000 people town called Asheville, North Carolina, which is got a lot of what you were saying there, like a lot of like independent shops and very kind of a
Mhm.
hippie vibe to it very like it's in the mountains and it's very outdoorsy, but it's got like I mean it has an identity for sure. Like it has its
Yeah.
own thing, its own vibrancy, and there's always lots of stuff going on. And so I love like I lived there for 2 years and just loved it. Like it was super fun, always something going on, but not a big city either. Yeah, it's great to find these places.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I said like everywhere else in the UK that I lived and even, back home in Vienna, like I've always had this is okay for now, but I'm like itching to go to the next place and I wanna, I'm probably gonna live somewhere else in a year's time. And Bristol has been the first place in like ever that I remember where I go, there's nowhere else at the moment that I really need to explore. Like I'm so happy here. So
Yeah.
I for the longest time I didn't think that was possible because I just thought maybe that's just me. Maybe I just can't stick to one place. So yeah, it's
I've wondered
great.
this about myself too, and then it's a little bit
Yeah,
scary because you're like, "Wait a second, I'm too comfortable here. Like, is something wrong? Like, am I
yeah.
losing my sense of adventure or something?"
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I'm curious though, so if you wanna stay, given Brexit, can
No.
you? Like, do you have any restrictions, that you're aware of?
Yeah, so luckily, so how it works is once you've been in the country and like worked here for 5 years or longer, there's a settlement scheme which you can apply for. And I think even if you're below that 5 year threshold, if you've been here before Brexit happened, then you can get a pre-settled status, if you will. So what that means is that will let you stay in the country up to when you've done your 5 years, And I've been here for 6 years now, so I've applied for settlement status and luckily got it. So I can move around freely. Obviously, I've
Ah,
got an Austrian passport, so the EU isn't going to turn me away. Luckily,
yeah.
so I can still like travel back and forth. But at the same time, when I come back, it shouldn't be an issue. Obviously, I haven't tested this because of COVID, but
Yeah.
well, yeah, we'll see.
So yeah, so just a little pandemic going on out there
Yeah.
makes things change a bit. Yeah, I've got a friend here in Spain that's from the UK,
Mm,
and he's been here for 6 years, I think.
yeah.
And because I don't know what the time frame is, I don't know if you know, but like because he's been here for a certain number of years,
Mm,
the Spain's kind of grandfathering him in,
yeah.
like you don't need to get a visa. You're basically treated exactly the same as you were before.
I mean, it's so great. I'm so like when they announced the settlement scheme, I was sort of against it because the whole idea of if you're not from here, you have to register for this whole scheme. That to me just seemed like a way to divide people. And why do you need certain
Mm,
information about me but not about someone who probably has paid less tax than me in the last 6 years? It just makes no sense to me.
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm really glad that it does exist because it does give you a bit of security. Like it was a very stressful time when it was all happening. So obviously, if you're
Yeah.
living abroad, your employment is kind of up in the air at that stage. Like, what do you do? So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that something exists. It's obviously far from ideal, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse, I think.
Mm.
And I imagine you were thinking the worst at the time, going through Brexit, and I mean, you're just kind of being getting settled there, it seems, and so
Yes.
I
Yeah.
imagine that was super stressful.
Yeah, it was. I think it's just, I was pretty confident that it was going to go one way, not the other. And
Yeah.
sadly, it didn't. So I think that morning, like waking up and watching the news and just it all like settling in, like I don't think I'll ever forget that feeling. It's not a great feeling.
Mm.
So yeah, it was just I even remember like sitting on my sofa and having to call my line manager and going, there's no way of me coming in today. I just need like I'll work from home, but there's no way I'm coming anywhere near the office today because I'm just not in a good emotional stage. But yeah, so it was really difficult, and I think the most difficult part is friends like who are also from abroad deciding, yeah, I don't want to stay here, can't do this, and like moving away, and or other people in your vicinity like finding out the way that they've voted in the referendum, and like
Mm.
it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. Yeah.
It's a weird parallel that Americans and Europeans were going through at the same time, because I mean it was
Mm.
a different sort of thing, but same with Trump, like getting elected. It was everybody,
What
literally
a
everybody,
time.
just
What a time to
yeah.
be alive. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
really strange year and a really strange
Yeah.
following 4 years. Like I had the like what you were saying there. It could have been me just with the Trump thing. Like, oh, I totally thought it was going to go one way, as did everybody else, and then it suddenly
Yeah.
went the other. And you
Yeah.
think, and like the next day, you have to go into work, and you're like, is this? Am I in some sort of like Twilight Zone? Like this really happened? And then you find out people that that voted that way. You're like all these surprises that come with
Yeah.
it. And then in that case, there was also a lot of like divide between stuff at the borders with Mexico,
Mm.
and sort of like underlying racism, and with Brexit, I mean a lot of it was driven by that. So there is this like this very nationalistic feel to both those situations that was happening at the same time. And as an expat, like in that situation, you're not really the reason that it went that way, but like people are saying like, no, we want our borders closed for us. And I wonder if that
Yeah.
affected you on any level, like emotionally or psychologically or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, every single level, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's what I struggled with the most is that feeling of, right, like a certain percentage of this country do not want me here
Hmm.
because I'm not from here and I'm apparently taking away jobs, which I'm not. Like I'm an educated woman. Like it's like, yes, I could do my job from anywhere. But I also think, I'm a big fan of freedom of movement. Like I think it's really like changed the world for the better. And like if I think back generations ago, like no one would have even considered moving abroad to even study abroad, right? It was just, it's what you did. You grew up in a certain place and you stayed in that place, and no one in your family would question anything about that. And I think it's, it's such a privilege to be able to go, where do I want to go? Like, what country do I want to live in? What city do I want to live in? And for that to be like put into question wasn't a nice feeling. So, waking up and finding out, yeah, okay, so I know racism existed before, like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, but this is a different level. Similarly, like finding out people that I knew and people that I was close to, that they voted a certain way, and then when you question them, they say, "Well, this has nothing to do with you because that's not going to affect you." And I went, "How is this not going to affect me?" Or the fact that, well, it's not racism because A, you're white, and B, listen to your English accent, you can blend in, and it's like comments like that where you then just go, I mean, I can't change my accent. So, like, it is what it is. But at the same time, just because I blend in doesn't make this any less valid or difficult for me. That just makes it worse, right? Because,
Yeah.
yeah, like I get asked all the time when I meet new people and they say, "Oh, we can't place your accent. Like, where are you from?" And I go, "Austrian." And they just go, "That makes absolutely no sense." Like, the amount of times I have to like get my passport out and say, "No, it's real. It's real." Like, yeah, no,
I
it's just
remember
crazy.
I don't know if you recall this, like when we first hopped on a call to discuss this, and I had a brief moment of like, did I screw up and like explain to her wrong what this show's about, or like did
She's
like
not an
maybe I was
expat.
thinking of somebody else. I was like, because you're in the UK and you're obviously from
Yeah.
there, so I don't know if that starts to annoy
Yeah.
you. Like after a while, you're like, yes, I get it. I have a really good accent, but you do. So
No, yeah, no, I do, like, it's a nice thing, right? It is
yeah.
a nice thing, and I do, like, my accent has gone through so many different changes and, like, so many different, like, years of sounding differently, that I feel for my family and friends, whenever they hear me speak, they just go, "It's like talking to a new person again." So yeah, but, it I don't think it's as common. I'm just that kind of person that, sometimes like I'll speak to someone, and even in German, I'll do this because I worked in German briefly while living in the UK. And, Austrian German and German are a little bit different in terms of accent and like some of the dialects. And I caught myself, like, I thought this was just a thing I did in English. But when I speaking to someone from Germany, I started like mimicking their accent, and I just went,
Hmm.
what is going on with my brain? Like, why, why do I just not have my own accent? Like, why is that not a thing? So
Oh, I'm
yeah.
totally guilty of this. My wife makes fun of me all the time because she's like, you're taking on, like, we've been around these people for 5 minutes and you're like taking on their accent, and I totally do it. I'm guilty as charged for sure. Like I'm like, I don't know why. I mean, I'll start throwing in words that make no sense. And the Spain Spanish is very different from like Latin American Spanish.
Mm.
And one of the big things is they use this like lisp thing. And I don't know if you speak any Spanish or if you
I
know it.
don't speak any Spanish, but no,
You
no
know
Spanish.
it.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
So one of the main things like that's like kind of hard is like they say like Barcelona, they say Barcelona, something like that.
yeah,
It's a nice
yeah.
and when I'm talking to a Latin American, I it's much easier for me, although most of the Spanish I've learned has been in Spain. When I'm
Mm.
talking to a Latin American, it's hard for me to say like C's and S's and Z's as like,
Yeah.
TH. So when I'm talking, but that's how I speak in Spain
Yeah.
because that's how you speak. But when I talk to a Latin American, I immediately turn that off, and it sounds really funny if you hear it. You're like, why are you like you're speaking totally different to these two different people? And
Yeah.
I don't even mean to, but it just happens.
It's such a good skill to have though, isn't it? And like at the same time, I always feel for people that don't know me that well because I had a friend from South Africa, and like her accent was brilliant, but whenever we had a couple of drinks and it was just the two of us, I would start mimicking her accent, and I remember this is like a month of knowing each other, and she would go, are you making fun of me? Is this? I go, no, I'm not doing this on purpose. I promise. So yeah.
I love it. Like when your strengths come back to bite you sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't want to harp on it too long and
Mm,
cast a negative light on and dwell on Brexit, but I did think it was really interesting some of the things we were discussing there, and I think it's also one of the really common topics these days is
mm,
for Europeans, like, passing back and forth, from the UK back to Europe, and can Europeans live in the UK? And so do you have, for any of our listeners that might be, say from Germany or Austria, or somewhere in the Shenzhen area, part of the EU, that want to move to the UK or relocate, maybe they're working remotely or whatever. Do you have any info to share on, and you may not, and that's fine if you don't, on like
mm.
what's possible and what's not, because I have no clue.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say up front, like, I'm not a lawyer. I
Yeah.
don't work
Disclaimer.
in government. Like, I do take this with a pinch of salt. I mean, I don't know if we're still in some sort of transitional period where it's easier. I think we might be, but it's not impossible. I think, yes, it's going to be more difficult than it was a couple of years ago. I'll say that. But at the same time, I think it is still possible. I think it will probably just be a bit more difficult in terms of if you're not working remotely, then finding employment here is probably going to be a bit more challenging because there is a degree of you need to meet certain criteria. Your employer will probably have to pay a bit more than well, they didn't have to pay, so they probably will have to pay at this stage. So I think that definitely changes. But I do think if you already work remotely, in my head anyway, this should be much easier because you're already employed. So essentially, what you're doing is you're just relocating. But yeah, I mean, take it as a pinch of salt. I would
Yeah.
still like, I with everything that I've been through and everything that the UK has been in the news for over the last years, I still like I don't regret coming here. Like it's been such a great journey and I can only recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your social circle like in Bristol? Like, is it very international, or is it mostly locals, or what's the vibe like in that area?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, as an expat, and you'll probably agree, it's kind of as an expat, no matter where you live, you will just attract internationals to you because that is such a big thing to bond over, isn't it? So I think Bristol is the first city that I've lived in the UK where I probably have more local friends than anywhere else. Saying that though, there's loads of international groups. So I'm part of a group called Girl Gone International, which is this big community and they're all over the world. And they're all about, expat women and women who have lived abroad. So one of my friends in Bristol, who's from Bristol, she worked abroad in Germany for a year and then came back and said, I'm an expat now because I lived abroad. I can join this group, and yeah, so it's lots of international women in that. There's also I've got friends with children now. I'm old enough to say that. So there, I've got some German speaking friends in Bristol who one side of the partner is from a German speaking country, the other side is from the UK, and they have these like German speaking language exchange meetups for the children where they learn German nursery rhymes and things like that. So there is like an up and coming like expat community in Bristol, which is really nice. But I do think it's probably one of the first places in the UK where I actually have proper like English friends, which I
Yeah.
didn't have before because it's so easy to find other internationals, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you definitely bond over that, like we're all in this together kind of thing. Not like
Mm.
it's a hard thing to be an expat necessarily. It
Yeah.
can be. It's not all fun
Yeah.
and games. But like there is sort of a like, you're not from here either, are you? And that you can
Yeah.
kind of bond over that.
Exactly, yeah, and it's even just, like, the small, silly stuff that you just weren't aware of when you first moved to the UK, like, it's just the little things that you bond over. Because the big stuff, like, the difficult parts, like, I hardly ever talk about Brexit with any of the other internationals because yeah, we've all been through it and we're still here, right? So,
Yeah.
so it's more my English friends who go, "How does it work? What, what, what do you have to do?" And so yeah, yeah.
Well, on that note, what do you like, do you have
Mm.
to, we talked about this a little bit, but like, are you going to have to regularly reapply at all, or are you just like totally, if you're fine, like you could just stay?
Yeah, so it's a one and done as far as I'm aware, and as long
Okay.
as they don't change it. I actually celebrated this last year, which I didn't think was going to be a thing that I do. But yeah, so essentially, I mean, unless I decide to move abroad, that would obviously, like, as in, like, move away from the UK, that would change things. I do think there is an element of, even if you move to a different country, as long as you, I think, visit once every 6 months or something like that, then you can still come back, because that would still give you a valid settlement status,
Ah,
or
cool.
something along those lines. Yeah. So yeah, unless I move away from the UK, I think I'm good to go. But at the same time, if I move away from the UK, then, like, it's questionable whether I need it, right? Because
Yeah.
there's got to be a reason why I move away. So yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
yeah.
Is there anywhere else that's on your radar that you've kind of like penciled in as like, if I were to move somewhere, I might go there?
Yeah, so obviously when I graduated from uni, I was very much I'll go anywhere because I can. But, the Netherlands has always been high on the list. And I actually, like, not too long ago, I think this is like 3 years ago now, had a job offer in Amsterdam and was about to, like, root up my life and go, but then decided not to. But yeah, I think the Netherlands is always like, because there are certain similarities, I think the Netherlands is very much just like the Dutch language. It's like marrying the German culture and the English culture together.
Mhm.
And I don't know if any Dutch listeners are gonna hate me for this, but like that's how I see it anyway. um, but yeah, so I think that's always going to be an option. But I always say, I'm quite fortunate that marketing is quite international. So, you never know. And I always say, for a dream job or a dream opportunity, I probably wouldn't say no to many places, to be honest. At least at this stage in my life. See what happens. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually funny enough. So Amsterdam is one of those cities that I would also
yeah.
consider like actually it would be at the top of my list, which is sometimes though is hard for me. I've become such a snob about sun and like good weather.
Oh, I can
Um
imagine. I can't relate. I can't
yeah.
relate. Yeah,
Yeah, we
I'm the opposite. Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. So I mean it really is what you get used to, and when it's for instance here it's been oddly quote unquote rainy the last couple weeks, which means like
Mm,
it's not been sunny and there's been a bit of rain 4 or 5 days out of the week for 2 or 3 weeks, and people are really going crazy, like, it's like depression, I watched a friend's face just totally melt into depression when he realized it was gonna be raining on a Saturday, and he was like, "I don't understand, like, what are we gonna do on a Saturday if there's rain?
yeah.
Like, this doesn't happen." So anyway,
Oh my
I say
gosh.
that, and so
Yeah.
I've kind of like become that way a little bit, and I think, could I live in Amsterdam now? But anyway, as of now, if I set that to the side, that's on my list as well.
Yeah.
Like it's such a fun city, and just I know a lot of people think about it for like like the party scene and the coffee shops and the red light district and stuff, but like that's a
There's so much
cool.
more to it.
There's
There's so
so
much
much
more
more
to
to it.
it.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like that's such a like tiny little fraction of that
Mm,
city, and I
yeah.
would totally live there.
Oh, absolutely. I think, like, I've visited a lot, and I just think every time I go, there's more and more that you can see, more and more that you can explore. Like, it's just, and again, like, it just has a nice, like, vibe, and it's
Yeah.
like very, very artsy, very, like, people oriented, I think. So yeah, no, it's a good place. But I also think, like, the point that you made around, like, now being conscious of what the weather is going to be
Mhm.
like, I think that's one thing that you learn as you move around, is you just realize what's actually important to you. Like, when I was living back in Vienna, I when I looked to move somewhere, I didn't really have any criteria other than get me a job there. Other than that, I was like, oh, I'll learn a new language if I have to. I'll do this, I'll do that. Lots of parks, great. If it's not, like, no big deal. But as you move around, you're now aware. Like, I'm very aware, if it's not a green city, I'm probably not going to do very well. And I think that's just been, you know multiplied by the last year.
Oh, yeah.
um yeah, but things like, oh, is it going to be raining all the time? Am I just going to feel miserable? I think that those are only things that come to your mind once you've lived in multiple places. Otherwise, you just go, oh yeah, this looks fine. Like, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, that those experiences educate you on yourself. Sometimes you go, "Oh, I didn't
Mm,
realize I hated that," or like I
yeah.
because your environment that you grow up in and that you live in, you just kind of take for granted, like, "Oh, this is just the way it is."
Yeah.
And when you go on vacation, a lot of times you escape that. Like maybe you go to a tropical island on vacation, and
Yeah.
you think, "Oh, well, that's just vacation life," like you
Exactly. Yeah.
compartmentalize that, and you say,
Yeah.
"But I'll never
You
live on that tropical
no.
island." But now it's
No, because
possible. Like
that's
you can.
vacation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my holiday, like, destination. You can't live in those places because that's
No.
where you go on holiday. Yeah. No,
We limit
definitely.
ourselves in that way. I think that's going to
Mm,
change with the upswing in remote work and countries, especially these a lot of
yeah.
tropical islands are giving and rural areas are giving visas for remote workers and just saying, yeah, come live here for a year or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think there's going to be more of that. Maybe opening people's minds to more of like, oh, I don't have to stay in X place to work.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think it's so great. And I think, having seen, even if it's not work from wherever you want in the world, it's still no one's going to be tied to their desk anymore after this, which is so great to see. Because I worked remotely for my previous employer, and I moved around while working for them, and it was never an issue. And now, yes, I'm back in an office, but we've always had a flexible system. So we were 3 days in the office and then 2 days from wherever. But similarly, if you said, "Oh, I'm going away on holiday for a week. I'd like to add on another week and then work from wherever I go," that would never be an issue. So, my boss when I joined, it was just the two of us, and he said, "Oh, I've actually got." I'm going to fly to Japan and go to the Rugby World Cup, but obviously, like, I work from out there. And we made it work, and it was
Yeah.
great. So I think, a lot of people have had this mindset for the longest time. I know you and I both had this for the longest time. But it's great to see, like, the rest of the world catching up and going, "Oh, I don't have to just sit at my desk and go out for a walk. I can work from a different country. I can work from a different city for the week." So yeah, it's brilliant to see. Yeah.
It's the same as what we were just talking about with like,
Mm,
thinking we're geographically limited. Like we
mm,
also think like, oh, well, no, like this is at work life. We sit at a desk
yeah.
for 10 hours a day, and like that's what
Mm,
you do. And you have a 1 hour lunch break, and that's it. And we're all being forced to challenge that. Some people challenged it a long time ago, some people are challenging it just for the first time or something in
mm,
between, but it's sort of it's changing hyper fast, like super,
yeah.
super fast because of COVID, obviously. Yeah, so really, really interesting. What does the office do for you guys? Like how does it like you have that element to your workday? Does it give you what's the pros of getting together versus just
Yeah.
always being remote, for instance?
Yeah, so I think so working in marketing, so I now work for a digital marketing agency. And I think, like I said, I joined them 18 months ago. It was just my boss Nick and me. So when it was just the two of us, it probably was a bit easier and we could have done a lot of it remotely. Now, as there's 7 of us full time, the team's growing, we're hiring, a more junior level. You kind of, yes, you can do a lot remotely, but nothing changes the feeling of just watching over someone's shoulder and going, and this is how you do it, because
Yeah.
it's a 10-minute conversation rather than a 30-minute Zoom call, right? So I think those are parts of it. So we are, like, growing the business, and I don't think we could do it as well if we were all remotely constantly. But we have been forced to work remotely a lot, and
Mm,
we have made it work. And I think the other part is also, I'm very fortunate that we all get on so well. Like, we are a really tight knit team. So I used to see going into the office as I have to go to the office. Here, I'm looking forward to go to the office because I get to hang out with my friends, as cheesy as that sounds, but that's how it feels. So I think that absolutely changes the mindset as well. But then throughout the pandemic, we've done so much online that whenever I speak to, other people in other businesses and my friends, they're always, like, so amazed by what we've done, because we'd usually do a monthly social in person where we either go out for dinner or do an activity or whatever. And throughout the pandemic, we did a wine tasting session, a drawing class, we did a balloon animal making class. We went all out. We did like murder mysteries online. We did a ginormous like pub quiz where we got all of our clients involved and they donated to charity to be part of it. So we went full in on the like virtually together trend. Like
Oh,
we, yeah,
wow. I wanna pick your
yeah,
brain more on this, on a
yeah.
separate call, but, like,
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
I'm super interested. We're actually, like, experimenting with a lot of this stuff at Duist, like, trying to get better
Yeah.
at the which is weird. We're, like, been a fully remote team for 12 years, but some of these things we're still trying to figure out how to nail.
Of course.
The
Yeah.
social aspect is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, like it doesn't, for me at least, it doesn't replace the English culture of going to the pub after work on a Friday. Like
Right.
that's still, that is just part of work life
On a
here.
Friday
Um,
or a Tuesday or a Wed
or a
yeah.
Tuesday lunch, whenever they're open and will take us. Yeah. But we even like for that to replace that, we put in a Friday after work drink where we all just sat together on another Zoom call, but all with a drink in hand and just talking about our week and what we were going to do over the weekend. So I think it's just for me, the most important thing is that you don't just say, oh, it's a remote team, so we don't need a social aspect to it, because I think you need that even more. And as much
Mhm.
as I don't want to have organized fun all the time, it is like it forces you to actually put in the time and make sure that everybody comes along. And even like I'm super extroverted, most of our team are super extroverted, so it comes naturally to us. But even for more introverted people, if they have this in their calendar, they'll know I'll show up, I'll be there, and even if I don't speak, I'll still like be part of the group. So I think it just becomes even more important. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, happy to chat more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. My dad uses this kind of like phrase all the time. He says like nothing you'll never replace a handshake. And like he's
Mm,
talking about, when you just walk in and you can say look somebody in the eye and shake their hand
yeah.
like that interpersonal connection is impossible. I mean, I'm tempted to use the word impossible
Mm,
to replace, and we are replacing it in a lot of ways with all the technology that's coming out and
yeah.
everything. I mean, they can with there's virtual reality conference calls now where you can literally
Yeah.
feel like you are actually in the same room as people, but just never going to quite be there. And I'm a very social person also, and I go to a
Mm,
co-working like I'm at a
yeah.
co-working and I socialize in normal times. We're doing paella parties and happy hours
Nice.
and so
Yeah.
I need that. Like I don't have it with my coworkers, but I have it with my quote unquote coworkers in my office here. So yeah, people, I mean, and everybody's a little different. People need this in different ways, different levels. Some people don't need it at all, but
Absolutely.
some people
And
do.
I admire them. I admire them because even when I was working fully remotely, I joined co-working groups and I joined co-working spaces because I can't do this like 5 days a week. I
Yeah.
just can't like just be on your own. I would absolutely go crazy. And like when I was working fully remotely and I didn't have co-working, I did like the people that I lived with could tell, like they would come back from a day at the office or around people. And the moment they walked into the house, I'd be like, right, tell me what it's like on the outside. Tell me everything about your day. And they'd be like, no, I came home to have some peace and quiet, Hannah. I don't want to interact with yet another human being. So yeah, I think co-working spaces are so important. And I actually, when I moved to Bristol, I was still working remotely. So I Bristol has a meetup group called Co-working, and it's set up by some really good friends of mine. And the amount of people that I've met through that group has been fantastic. And I still, although I'm not working remotely anymore, other than 2 days a week, I still like go along to their socials and things like that. I'm a little bit of a fraud there, but they're great. And it does create a community, and there has been like skill share across them, and people have helped each other with their businesses and things like that. So it's great community to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're social beings. We crave
Mm,
the like generally speaking, of course not everybody, but a lot of people
yeah,
we do just crave that
yeah,
tribe kind of like to be a part of a group. It's
Absolutely.
cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool to see the different ways you can still find that. Like I mean, in a lot of ways, you could be living a very isolated life, right? Like working
Mm,
remotely for much of your career, being an expat, like can be lonely. A lot of people, a lot of expats
oh
suffer
yeah.
from depression and find themselves very lonely, missing home.
Mm,
A lot of people are not so fortunate to really have chosen to live abroad. They're
mm,
forced into it for various reasons or whatever, but like you've managed to build a lot of communities, a lot of tribes around you, which is really cool and I think inspiring for people that are maybe scared to make that jump. Like it is actually pretty easy to, if you put yourself out there a little bit. There's online communities you mentioned,
mm.
there's co-workings, there's meetups, skill shares, master classes. There's no shortage if you're in any kind of a semi-urban place where there's other humans around you. Like you'll be able to find that in person, but then also like virtually there's all these
Yeah.
communities too, and you can get a lot of support from those groups as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, it's a walk in the park. It's great. Like, it's really nice for you to say, like, it's inspiring to listen to. But I bet if we had this conversation like 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been a very different conversation. Because you do, yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like, I still get homesick, right? But
Yeah.
at the same time, when I'm back home, I also get like homesick again of my new home. So it is like, it's so difficult. And I think this is just something that, if you're not an expat, if you haven't lived abroad, you don't really get that concept of craving a place that isn't your home, or, craving your family. Because I've had loads of conversation with people when I first moved abroad and I said, oh, I'm really struggling at the moment. And it's usually whenever I go back home, I see my family and then I come back. That's when it's the hardest, I think.
Super hard.
Yeah. Or just that moment at the airport where you go, "Ooh, I don't I'll see you soon, but I don't know when." Like, it's just
Oh,
it's
those are
difficult, isn't
tear-jerking
it? Yeah.
moments. Yeah.
It is, and it doesn't matter what age you are, it's always gonna be difficult. But, I would say this to people, and I would say, like, "It's really difficult," and they would go, "Well, you've just been home, though, so why don't you just move back to Austria then if you miss it so much?" And go, "No, but when I'm there, I also miss the UK and my life here and my friends here." Like, it's there's always, I don't think that a place exists where I'm not going to miss something. Like, that's just the reality of being an expat. If you don't miss home, you miss something else. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's not easy, but it's worth it, and it's worth pushing through the difficult months and years to yeah, absolutely love it. And now I'm at that place, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have a place that you miss. It would kinda suck
Mm.
if you didn't. Like like if
Oh,
you're
can you
you
imagine?
wa
Yeah.
you wanna miss home a little bit,
Mm,
because if you don't, then that means something's wrong with home probably. But
absolutely.
there's a real element to what you're saying. Like I frequently miss I'm very close with my family. Like I have a good
Mm,
relationship
yeah.
with my core family, with aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and a good group of friends back home. And so I like frequently I'm like, why am I missing out? I'm missing out on
Mm.
birthdays and graduations
It's
and
the
funerals
gatherings,
and
isn't it?
yeah,
It's
it's
whenever the
those
family gets together and you just
yeah.
go, "Oh, yeah, I can't go back home
Can't
that often." Like, I just
no,
can't.
I
Yeah.
won't be there for
Yeah.
that, and that's really sad. Why
Yeah.
am I doing that to myself
Mhm.
again? But then when you're there, like, I go back for a month, and by the end of that month, I'm like, man, I'm really, really kind of missing. Like, I want
Yeah.
another paella party, and I want to go to
Yeah.
I want to swim in the Mediterranean again, or like so.
Yeah.
It's yeah,
And your
it's
life's
interesting.
different, right? Your life is different. Like, as much as, we all revert back to a version of ourselves when we're back home with our parents and family. Like, I do appreciate that. But you do develop in a different way when you live abroad. And because you had to do things on your own. So it part of my family, like in my immediate family, so this is my parents and my sisters, I'm the only one who's moved away. So my sisters both live like half an hour, 40 minutes away from my parents. So if anything happens, my parents are there, like my sisters are there, they all support each other, which is brilliant. And like, I'm glad that my sisters are there because, as my parents are getting older, like, it would be horrible if they were reliant on me and I'm like on the other side of Europe, right? So
Yeah.
like, that would paint me in a really bad picture. So I do appreciate that. But at the same time, I do think, when my sisters were growing up and they started moving into their first places and things like that, they always had that security net of my parents being there, my parents being able to explain to them, like, this is how you set up your utility bill and what have you.
Mm.
I didn't have that because, like, obviously my parents would love to help and they're happy to help, but they don't know how things work in the UK. And like, how would they? So you just have to figure it out for yourself, and you're gonna get it wrong, but it does like develop your skills and your confidence in completely different ways. Because, I think I would really struggle if I moved back to Vienna and my parents would, try and help me. And I'd be like, hang on a minute. I've done this for years on my own. I don't need you in the nicest way possible. Like, I'll figure it out. So
Yeah.
so yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. You mentioned this, but like, what is, if we were having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, like, what were some of
Mm.
the main struggles that you had when you first moved abroad?
Um, where to begin? So I think, I moved abroad at the age of 21, and for years I've wanted to live abroad and I knew like that's what I want to do. So when I got my job offer, I had 3 weeks to find a place to live, pack up all my things, and then just get go abroad, right? Because it no one's going to wait around for 6 months for you to figure your life out, and also needed to start earning money. So that was also a reality.
That too.
So yeah, um, so like those 3 weeks were just I was excited, and everything was go go go, and I didn't have any time to just sit down and think about what I'm actually doing. And it was so I moved from Vienna to Manchester, and at that point there were no direct flights from Vienna to Manchester. So I flew into Munich, and I remember sitting at Munich airport waiting for my layover. And after all these years of wanting to move abroad, that was the very first moment where I remember just sitting there and going, "What have I just done? I am all on my own. I'm about to move in with 4 guys in a house share that I've never met, in a city that I've never been to, in an area that I've never seen, starting a job that I've never done before with people that I've never met in person." Like, it just all like came crashing down. And I remember just like almost tearing up and just going, "No, I'm on my own. There's no one here." Like, I can't just sit at Munich airport just
And I did this
crying.
to myself, you know?
Exactly, yeah. No one wanted me to leave, but I did. So that was hard. I think also that first weekend of being in a new place and not knowing where anything was, like, as much as I'm an extroverted person and find it really easy to like meet people and connect with people, that was daunting. I remember sitting in my room at that time and going, "I'm actually a little scared to go outside because I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't know how to move around here. I don't know the public transportation system. Like, I've just no idea." So that was really difficult. And I think then just the little things like having moved from Vienna to a city like Manchester. Vienna is such a safe city. It is beautiful. It's taken care of. I would at uni, I would walk home on my own at 3 a.m. without a doubt in my head, because I was like, nothing's going to happen. It's all safe, right? I did. I went out in Manchester for the first time, and I remember taking the bus back home, and it was all fine. But I came home, and my housemates went, "You didn't just come home on your own, did you?" I went, "Yeah, of course I did. I'm a grown woman. What did you think I was going to do?" And they said, "You can't do this here. Like, it's..." So that was a huge like culture shock that I had, where, yes, you would read about, women getting raped down the road from where I was living, and, people getting stabbed, and like that was all new to me. I've
Yeah.
never, like, obviously like things do happen in Vienna. It's not like everybody loves each other. But
But it is,
like I
as
wouldn't
as big cities go, it's a Pleasantville kind of
it, yes,
vibe
yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah.
Very much so. Yeah,
And
very much
Manchester is
so.
not.
I mean, I like, even when I moved back and I thought, I've gotten over my first shock. When I moved back again, I lived in an all right area. Like, it wasn't the nicest, but it also wasn't the worst. But I remember, like, down the road from us, so like 10 minutes away, every single weekend, at least one person would get stabbed or like a knife fight would break out. And this was all new to me. Like, I was really struggling with that. I was like, and the cat calling and things like that, those things just never happened to me in Vienna. Like, and I think this is when I realized pretty sheltered life back at home. Like, I never had to worry about any of this. So yeah, so that was really difficult to get to grips with, and I think I don't feel like that in Bristol. Like obviously, again, like things do happen, but it's much less intense. So I think that was also part of why I like it so much here. And
Mm.
touch wood, nothing's happened so far. But yeah, I think it's just things like that which just don't cross your mind, do they? Because you just go, it's Europe, it's safe.
Yeah, yeah,
Some parts
exactly.
more than others. Yeah.
We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers, so they know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the episode. I'm really curious. The comment you just made. Like it's Europe, it's safe. So interestingly, it's not Europe anymore, technically,
What?
right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
No,
still Europe, not the EU, but still
not the
Europe.
EU.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so this is a question I wanted to ask you. So as a continental European,
Yeah.
moving to you have referred in this conversation to moving to the UK as moving abroad. Would
Mm-hmm.
you, if you had moved from Austria to Germany, would you have thought of yourself as an expat as well? Would you, so within,
Ooh.
what I'm getting at is I wonder if then and now, if this has changed with Brexit and stuff, if
Hmm.
there's, if something feels different versus like, moving from Austria to northern Italy, like it's super close geographically, but
Yeah.
culturally arguably more different than
Yeah.
moving from Austria to the UK. So I don't know. I'm curious about this like dichotomy. And then kind of as a where we can go to with this is what's so different about this part of Europe with the
Hmm.
UK and where you're from in Europe. So take that and run
Yeah.
with it however you want.
Yeah, this is such an interesting question. It really is. So I think, like, anywhere, to be honest, anywhere outside Austria, I would see as I moved abroad. Even within German speaking countries, I would, wherever I moved to in Germany, they would, the first sentence that I say, they would know that I'm from Austria. Like they would just
It's
know.
that obvious.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
yes, yeah. So unless I try really hard, but why would
Well,
I?
you're good at accents.
So
You might be able to hide
exactly,
it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I do think, and like the culture is a little bit different, like especially even just within Germany. If you go to Hamburg or if you live in Berlin or you go to Munich, completely different.
Totally.
Like there's such different parts. So I do think, that would be different. Like obviously if I moved within Austria itself, again, like that wouldn't be moving abroad, obviously, but it would be different and it would take me time to like adjust. Like if I moved from Vienna to say somewhere like Klagenfurt, which is on the other side of the country, yeah, that would take me a while to get used to, but it's just moving from a city to anywhere else, right? It's just like if you grew up in London and then you move to, I don't know, like the deepest ends of Somerset where there just isn't a city, but it's just towns and villages, like it's gonna take your time to adjust, right? So I think there is that aspect. I think moving to the UK versus moving to a country like Italy, for example, is the mindset doesn't necessarily change. It's still a different country, but I think what changes is the UK is further away than Italy. So one of my main things when I looked at different cities in the UK, even while I was living here, was I need to be in an okay distance from an airport that has direct flights to Vienna, because if things do happen back at home, I want to be able to be home within the day. Like that's just, and again, that's just not something that would cross my mind if I lived anywhere in Germany, probably, because I could just hop on a train, I could just drive, and I would be home, right? So I think the main difference between that is continental Europe is much easier to travel throughout than it is in the UK. And if you look at the pandemic, especially, if I lived in Germany, I could have gone to see my family. I live in the UK. I have to get a plane. It's not as straightforward, and I haven't seen my family in a long time. So yeah,
Yeah.
so that does make a difference.
So a little going like one step further, like
Mm,
culturally speaking, what can you? I guess was there anything that jumped out to you about moving from Austria to the UK? Where you're like, I mean, you mentioned I know that like Manchester was a bit of a shock,
mm,
but anything
yeah.
else, just generally speaking, about the British culture that was sort of like, oh, this is quite different in a positive or potentially negative way.
Yeah. So I think my my view on it is probably a little bit skewed, because my university life has been very much around internationals, right? So I went to an American university in Austria. So I was around Austrians that only spoke English with each other. I was around lots of Eastern Europeans who came to Vienna to study there in English. I was around a lot of Americans. So it was super international. So I was already used to that, and I was used to meeting people from different countries and kind of interacting with them and being aware of cultural differences. Similarly, while I was growing up, and this goes even deeper, is I did Irish dancing for 8 years competitively. So again, Irish dancing isn't a normal hobby to do or a normal sport to do in Austria at all. Um, I don't know how this happened, but it did happen, and it was great. But what that meant was I traveled around a lot while growing up, and I was around a lot of Irish people. I was around a lot of English people. So in a way, for me, the culture felt a little bit more like home than probably your stereotypical Austrian culture would. I
Mhm.
mean, if my parents listen to this, they won't be happy about this. But like that's essentially what I related to, right? Those were my forming years. I
Yeah.
spent with, children from England and Ireland. So that was the environment that I was in. So I think in that sense, it wasn't that different. I do think there are certain things, even now when I go, oh, this is strange because I do this now and I probably wouldn't have done this a couple of years ago. So, it's things like even down to like the pace of life. I think Vienna like is very slow. Like it's everything's a bit relaxed. Like obviously there are big issues, but it's just, oh, we'll sort it out. We'll figure it out. It's all a bit like more relaxed, I guess. We do love our paperwork in Austria, so there is that, and like being productive and all. But it's all a bit, we'll figure it out. It'll be fine. Whereas in the UK, I think it's much more fast paced. So it's, especially London, like I did a bit of work in London, and it's just like it compared to Vienna, they're on speed constantly. Like
Mm.
it's madness. Not to say one thing is better than the other.
But just
But then I
different.
think there is, yeah, just different. And I think there is what I found most interesting about English culture and the UK culture is that there is this willingness to just accept when things are bad. Like we'll complain about it, we'll acknowledge that it's bad, but at the same time, can anyone be bothered to do anything about it? Probably not, because we've made it this far, so it'll be all right. So there is that sense of, but hang on a minute. Like even when I was living in Manchester, and I would speak to like people who were brought up in Manchester, like yes, they realized hearing about children after school being held knife point because they wanted to steal their bike isn't ideal and isn't okay, but just
It's a topic of conversation, but yeah.
it is, yeah. but it's also, it's not something that anyone's shocked by. Whereas I was sitting there with my like mouth down to my ankles going, how are we just all accepting this? This is not how you grow up. Like it's
Let's
just,
fix the problem. Let's get
I
pragmatic about it and
know.
fix the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And I think this is the Austrian coming out of me. It's like, no, there's a problem, let's solve it and move on. Like
Yeah.
efficiency. So there is that. I think that's quite curious. I do like, and I think a lot of my American friends see like the English as really difficult to approach, and they're like quite, stiff, and they don't warm up easily to you. I found the absolute opposite. Like I find, like yes, you'll always have people that you just don't click with, but I find English people so easy to approach and just like make conversation with. So yeah, so that's one thing that I just always find funny, how different countries and different cultures have different aspects and
Have you
different
ever
views.
read the Culture Map? The book, The Culture Map? You
No, I
you would
haven't.
you would absolutely love this book. I've finished it just recently, but it's all I mean, it's basically it's kind of set up. It's set for the workplace, but it
Mm,
applies to, and it basically is just talking about the way in which different cultures approach different things, like very broadly speaking communication, but then like more finitely speaking, like context, like which culture relies on
mm.
context and which ones don't, and which ones like how we deliver good news and bad news. And anyway, it
Oh,
talks about
amazing. Yeah.
tons of different cultures, really interesting. But they do talk a lot about Americans and British and Austrians and Germans and Dutch. And anyway, it's very interesting because from an America according to this book, from an American
Yeah.
standpoint, what you just said would totally be true. Like
Mm.
we would say, oh, they're hard to approach, but somebody from Austria or the Netherlands would say, oh no, they're very easy to approach. What are you talking
Oh.
about? So
Oh,
it's this
interesting.
it's all
Yeah.
about this spectrum and where we fall on these different spectrums. And of
Yeah.
course, it's she addresses very early on, like we're painting broad strokes here. It's just we're talking about
Course.
stereotypes, not
Mm.
every individual. We're all individuals, but it's really interesting. You'd probably love it.
Yeah, that sounds like right up my street. Yeah, I'll have to
It
check it
does.
out. Yeah.
Speaking of right up your street, so this is
Mm,
obvious. Like this has been like a part of your identity. This desire to move abroad. You went to an American university. You
mm,
did Irish dancing. Like
mm,
this is sort of like hardwired into you. And I
mm,
wonder if you, because I kind of like I kind of feel the same. Like I don't know what it is, but I just kind of crave being in a foreign place. I like being surrounded by people with different accents and different I
yeah.
like working in a super international environment with people from different cultures and the challenges that come with that. And something about it adds spice to life that makes it more
Mm.
fun. And I get that that's not for most people. It's not necessarily the easy route, but it makes life fun for me, and it sounds like for you too. So what do you think it is about that? And is that fair to say? Like it's kind of always been a part of your identity and who you wanted to be and what you wanted to do?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think what you said there is also probably one of the things that I would rank really, really high on my list of places I want to live in, is based on how many accents do I hear, how many different languages do I hear? And I don't mean tourists. I mean people like on the bus, like locals who will speak Polish, who will speak German, who will speak Chinese. Like that's like I want to hear that. This is like I want to be surrounded by different cultures. So yeah, I mean, good question. Like, what it is? Like, yeah, I feel like it's just always been a thing. Like, I didn't go out of my way and say I want to be in an international environment, so therefore I do Irish dancing. Like I didn't do that, but as soon as I like walked into the place for my very first dancing class, I was like, this feels right. Like yes, I want to learn English, like because my dance teacher, she spoke barely any German, right? So I really didn't have a choice whether I learned English or not. It was very much, if you want to know what's going on here, you'll probably have to learn. So, like yeah, so it's always been part of my life. I think it's very interesting because like I said, like my family, like again, my family has international background. So my parents both grew up in Austria, but on my dad's side, my family goes back to Eastern Europe, which is very common in continental Europe. Like if you trace your roots, you go back to Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Chances are, or Germany. And on my mum's side, they're all from Hungary. And what adds to that extra layer is also the extended family. On my mum's side, we're Jewish, so lots of with the Second World War, like lots of family members actually moved abroad. And I do wonder whether that's where I get it from, like because clearly they've done it, and maybe that's where it stems from. I don't know, because then the question is, well, my family's still all in Austria, right?
Yeah.
But there's always one, isn't there? So,
Yeah, you were the black sheep that just had to get away.
The youngest of three and the one that moved away. My parents are devastated. but yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I can't pinpoint like what it is exactly, but I always remember, like even when I was in like my normal school education, I had Irish dancing, which was like my international landscape. But if that wouldn't have been it, I always said to my parents, I didn't really enjoy like the school that I was in. And I always said to my parents, if it wasn't for Irish dancing, I would probably push to like go to an international school, because I want to be around international people. I want to be around people who like love different cultures and want to soak it all up. I don't want to, like if I look back, not a lot of the people that I went to school with actually left Austria. And if they did, they went to study abroad for a bit and then went back home. So yeah, that was never a life that appealed to me at all. Like I always knew eventually I'm gonna get out of Austria and just see the world. And that's what I've done. So yeah,
You've done just that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Hannah, this has been so fun. I've loved getting to know a little bit more about your story and learned a lot along the way as well. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing more. I don't know if there's anything else you want to, if we didn't get to anything about the UK, about moving from Europe. If we missed anything that you feel is important to share, please feel free to do so. But otherwise, yeah, thank you. This is really a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. It was great. And I'm so glad we got to make this work this time. And yeah, no, it was great. I don't think there's anything else. Like, obviously, like I'm more than happy if people are listening to this and go, actually, this sounds great, or they have any questions, like just drop me an email and we'll get in touch on LinkedIn or wherever you want to find me. And I'm happy to answer any questions. So yeah.
We'll list all that in the show notes, but for the listeners that aren't visual and just on their phones right now, where should people find you? Where's the best place socially to get in touch?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the easiest, which is, my full name is Hannah Urbanek. Yeah, I could spell out, but let's not, because this is another thing, I get asked this all the time whenever
it's
I
in the show
introduce
notes,
myself. They always go, oh, can you spell that out? So that's probably easiest. And then if you just want a direct email, it's probably hannah@createengage.co.uk, where you can reach me best.
And we didn't get into too much about work, but it's worth noting that as well. A little plug for the company as well. What was it again?
Yeah, so it's called Create Engage, and we can drop a link in the show notes. But we're a digital marketing agency specializing in consulting and professional services. So yeah,
I think it's actually kind of cool. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We produce our own podcasts as well. So
really?
there is that. Yeah. So if you want to talk all things podcasts with me, I'm happy to also chat about that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's that explains why this went so well today. So
yes.
No, really, thank you again. And yeah, it was just super fun to hear a bit more about your life and how you've settled in there, and some of the ups and the downs, some of the reality, like taking a peek behind the curtain is always really nice. I think to it's not just all Instagram photos and so good to talk about some of those things. So again, thank you so much. And I hope we'll catch up again soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. You can visit aboutabroad.com to get our latest updates and listen to past episodes, or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really anywhere you get your podcasts. On that note, if you enjoyed the show, feel free to subscribe and, if inclined, leave a few stars and a review. It's truly, truly appreciated and will help more wanderers just like you find us. Until the next time, adios from España.